From the rising of the sun to the place where it sets, the name of the Lord is to be praised. Who is like the Lord our God, the one who sits enthroned on high? He raises the poor from the dust and lifts the needy from the ash heap.
I invite you to now again, please stand as you are able in honor of our gospel reading, and we'll sing together the gospel acclamation. Our gospel reading for tonight comes from the Gospel of Mark chapter 10, where Jesus begins telling his disciples about the suffering and death he will endure. In the midst of this, James and John fight for who will sit shotgun with Jesus on the road trip of everlasting life, which angers the other disciples. All of their reactions prove that they still don't fully understand who Jesus is and why he came, a servant, not to be served, but to serve. Now, they were on the road going up to Jerusalem, and Jesus was walking ahead of them. They were amazed, and those who followed were afraid. He took the 12 aside and began to tell them what was to happen to him, saying, "See, we are going up to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man will be handed over to the chief priests and the scribes, and they will condemn him to death. They will hand him over to the Gentiles and will mock him, and spit upon him, and flog him, and kill him. And after 3 days he will rise again." James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came forward to him and said to him, "Teacher, we want you to do for us whatever we ask you." And he said to them, what is it you want me to do for you?" And they said to him, "Grant us to sit, one at your right hand and one at your left in your glory." But Jesus said to them, "You do not know what you are asking. Are you able to drink the cup that I drink, or be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with?" They replied, "We are able." Then Jesus said to them, "The cup that I drink you will drink, and the baptism with which I am baptized you will be baptized. But to sit at my right hand or at my left is not mine to grant, for it is for those whom it has been prepared." When the 10 heard this, they began to be angry with James and John. So Jesus called them and said to them, "You know that among the Gentiles, those whom they recognize as their rulers lord it over them, and their great ones are tyrants over them. But it is not so among you. But whoever wishes to become great among you must be your servant. And whoever wishes to be first among you must be slave of all. For the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life a ransom for many." The Gospel of the Lord. Thanks be to God. I invite you to please be seated. And I'm curious if there's any kids who want to come up for a children's sermon. Is there anyone who would come up here? I know there's a few, and there's some older kids who probably aren't up for it. You guys want to come up? Sure, come on up here. Anyone? Got a couple coming up here. All right, that's okay. Oh yeah, you guys come up from back there, that's great too. If you want to grab a seat here, you can. Oh, thanks for coming up, you guys. Just took a couple brave ones, huh? One girl. And one lady, yes. All right, good deal. Okay. Well, and I'm actually going to have you first look up at this picture on the screen here, okay? Let's see. Can we go to the next slide there? Okay, do you know who those folks are? Anyone recognize any of them or know who they are? Who do you think they are? One is Queen Elizabeth, and the rest is her family. We'll just call them the royal family. So in England, if you were all living in England, you would all know who they are because they're the royal family. Yep, Prince William's up there and Harry and there are a few others. But anyway, so I want to zoom in. It's going to get a little blurry, but see that kid on the far right-hand side, that boy next to the girl on the very end on that side? Let's zoom in on him. We'll go to the next picture here. Okay, what do you think about his outfit? Would you like to wear clothes like that? Like maybe to church? What do you think? No? What if you were the only one dressed like that here at church tonight? Would you feel a little funny? Yeah, it'd be a little embarrassing. One thing that's kind of interesting, if you notice, he's wearing gloves, fancy white gloves. Do you think those are gloves that you would go work in? No, those are fancy gloves. How about those shoes? It's kind of hard to see, but there's a big gold buckle on them. You think you'd want to walk around in those very long? Probably not. They probably start hurting your feet. And so that's the royal family. They're, very fancy, important people, and they dress, very fancy and in snazzy clothes. Well, here's what I wanted to talk about tonight is not just these royalty, but Jesus, who we talk about a lot here at church. He was called the King of Kings. But even though Jesus was a king, he didn't dress like this, like the royalty do. He wore normal clothes and like the clothes of a servant. And so our theme for tonight that we're talking about is joyfully serving as Christ's hands and feet. And so what that means is we think about the way Jesus served, and he served right along with all the people he was around. He helped them out. And so, each week we've had a little different symbol for what we were talking about. And this is what I've got for this week. What are these here? Do these look like fancy king's gloves? Nope, these are more like work gloves, aren't they? And how about these shoes here?
Not fancy.
No, more like work boots. Maybe you could wear them out hiking, but you probably don't want to wear them to prom tonight, right? No. And so, yeah, more for working. And the reason I got these is because when we think about Jesus and the way he lived his life when he walked the earth, he didn't do it wearing fancy kings and queens clothes. He did it wearing regular working clothes, regular old clothes, because he wasn't afraid to get dirty by helping people. And he walked a lot and got dirty and sore feet, I'm sure, but he did it so he could go and help people. And so that's why we say we want to be joyfully serving as Christ's hands and feet. Just like Christ, Jesus, served other people, we want to help people when they need us. Does that sound like an okay thing to do? Yeah, great. Well, thanks for coming up and looking at my stinky old shoes and gloves here. You guys can head back to your seats, and we'll keep talking about joyfully serving as Christ's hands and feet. That is our theme for tonight, joyfully serving as Christ's hands and feet. And as we start out today, I want to start by sharing a video clip. And so this video clip is from a TV show that I like a lot. It's called The Office. Now, some of you maybe never heard of The Office, and maybe you have and you don't like it, and I'm sorry if that's the case, but I'll tell you, it's a short clip, and I'm going to tell you the characters who are in it. So this is all you need to know about this show to know. In this clip here, actually the person you can see here already, this is Michael Scott, and he's kind of the blundering boss at this office. And the thing that you need to know about Michael is he always wants all of his coworkers, actually his employees, he's the boss, he wants them to be his best friend, and if not like his family. He wants them to love him. And so that's his thing. And in the scene we're going to watch, he's on crutches because this day that this scene takes place, that morning, he had a little accident and he burned his foot by stepping on a George Foreman grill. Now, this is kind of a strange scenario, right? And so that's what's happened to him. And so he has this kind of funny injury, and he's upset because no one else is really caring so much because he has this funny injury, but people aren't so worried about him and doting over him because it's kind of a goofy injury and it's not really that bad. And so the other main character in this scene is Dwight, who is Michael's loyal number two. He's the one with glasses, and he's the only one who actually cares that Michael burned his foot. He cared so much that as soon as he heard, he jumped in his car, sped towards Michael's house to go help him. But on his way, he crashed into a light pole and hit his head. And so he has a concussion. And so in the scene we're going to watch, Jim is the other character who's going to drive Dwight to the hospital, and Michael's going to come along because he's Dwight's emergency contact. So it's Jim, Michael, and Dwight. They're getting ready to head to the hospital. And so here's how their trip starts. Let's go ahead and start it here.
Shotgun!
You don't think you should sit in the back with Dwight?
The rules of shotgun are very simple and very clear. The first person to shout shotgun when you're within the sight of the car gets the front seat. That's how the game's played. There are no exceptions for someone with a concussion. Oh, God, a minivan.
That's it, right? Kind of funny. And so the rules of shotgun are very simple. That's all the part I want to do. The rules of shotgun are very simple. The first person to shout shotgun when you're within sight of the car gets the front seat. That's how the game is played. Anyone here ever called shotgun so that you could get the best seat and sit right in the front seat? Yeah, it's a good way to get the front seat, which is kind of the seat of honor. And what made me think about this clip and that whole idea of calling shotgun is in our gospel reading, James and John kind of call shotgun. Like I said in the introduction of the reading, they're kind of calling shotgun because Jesus is trying to tell them that he's going to be betrayed, tortured, killed, and on the third day rise again. But they're still picturing that he's going to be this great conquering king, that he's going to be sitting on a throne and be very powerful, and they want to be sitting shotgun right next to him, one on the right, one on his left. They're helping him out and being second in command. And so they want shotgun. But Jesus' reaction is, no, you want to call shotgun? You want to call shotgun with me? He says, can you drink of the cup that I'm going to drink of? You can't handle being shotgun with me. Because what he is headed towards isn't a throne of glory, right? He's heading towards Jerusalem, where he's going to be, as it said, tortured, betrayed, and ultimately killed. And on the third day rise again, but there's going to be a lot of tough times before that. Jesus, instead of being one who's going to be on the seat of power, shares really what his life and ministry is going to be all about. Jesus says, I tell you, whoever wishes to become great among you must be your servant. And whoever wishes to be first among you must be slave to all. For the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life a ransom for many. James and John call shotgun with Jesus because they want that seat of power. But what they don't understand is that Jesus, you could say, has already called shotgun with all humanity. He's given up his throne in heaven and come to walk the earth right alongside of regular people like you and me. And he's come not to be served by them like a royal prince or king, but to serve them, to heal the sick, to feed the hungry, to reach out and give of himself all that he has, and ultimately give his life and rise again on the third day. The big reveal from this gospel reading is that our theme verse today is that very last verse. It says, the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. Well, when we think about that and that truth, we remember that we are at our best when we are joyfully serving as Christ's hands and feet. There's a description for this guiding principle like all of them. And so I thought, let's put that up on the screen now. If we go to that next slide where it is. And let's read this together. This is the more detailed description of joyfully serving as Christ's hands and feet. Let's go ahead and read it together. Both the teaching and the life of Jesus point to service as central to the Christian life. We continue to work of Jesus by walking the walk of faith in service to others, both in our individual lives and also together as a congregation. When Jesus walked the earth, he got his hands dirty serving people. His feet got dirty walking hundreds and hundreds of miles, meeting people where they lived. And he was the ultimate servant who ultimately, as Scripture says, was obedient to the point of death, even death on the cross. And so in response to that gracious sacrifice and his great example of service, we are called to serve each other, to call just as Christ served. As we came up with these guiding principles from the very beginning, when we were giving shape to this language of joyfully serving as Christ's hands and feet, I was reminded of the 16th century Saint Teresa of Avila in her prayerful poem, Christ Has No Body. It's on the blue sermon chat handout or sermon sheet. If you have it there, it's on that sheet, and I'll read it now. Again, she wrote this, it's 500 years old, but it still speaks to this truth that we're talking about here today. It says, Christ has no body but yours, no hands, no feet on earth but yours. Yours are the eyes with which he looks compassion on this world. Yours are the feet with which he walks to do good. Yours are the hands with which he blesses all the world. Yours are the hands, yours are the feet, yours are the eyes, you are his body. Christ has no body now but yours, no hands, no feet on earth but yours. Yours are the eyes with which he looks, compassion on this world. Christ has no body now on earth but yours. This is what this guiding principle is all about, that when Jesus walked the earth, he made his life about service. And now that he has, as we say in the Creed, ascended into heaven, now Christ has no body now on earth but yours. So it's up to us to be joyfully serving as Christ's hands and feet, both as a congregation and as individuals. And I think we all know that joyfully serving as Christ's hands and feet is important, but as we say in the confession, sometimes we serve begrudgingly or not at all. We put ourselves before others. It's easy to do. There's a story I like that kind of gets to this point. It comes from the time of World War II. And there were these different first aid classes offered during World War II because there was this fear that there could be an attack on the American mainland. And if that happened, a whole lot of people could be injured. And so the government and some different organizations started offering these first aid classes, and they strongly encouraged people to take them. Well, that's the backstory. The story goes that there was one woman in one class who went to the first aid class each week, but went totally out of obligation. And she was not engaged in it at all. All the other students saw that she was not really there enjoying herself and didn't seem to be getting anything out of it. She never answered any of the questions. She never engaged in the class conversation. She just never participated at all. She just sat in the back looking bored, and this went on for a few weeks. Well then, lo and behold, they show up one week, and that one day when she came to class, this woman, she was just full of energy. She was like a brand new person. She was answering questions. She was participating in the conversation. She just seemed to be so interested in what they were talking about. And so the first time the class had a break, some of the other students went up to her and they said, "Say, we got to ask you. You seem to not care at all about this class, but now you seem so excited and engaged. You're wanting to learn this. What happened?" And the woman looked at them and she said, "I'll tell you what happened." She said, "I'll tell you what happened. You see, last weekend I was sitting on the front steps of my house and I was just relaxing, having a glass of lemonade, and lo and behold, there was a huge crash. And I looked up, and there at the corner, the street corner, right near my house, there was a car accident." She said there was a car accident and there were people who were hurt. It was obvious there was some blood and people were screaming. It was this horrible scene. And I started to panic. She said, "I thought I was going to pass out. I was so scared and overwhelmed." And then I remembered this class. She said, "Then I remembered the lessons we had learned in this class, the first aid skills that we had learned. And so I sat down in a chair and I put my head between my knees and I took a few deep breaths and I was fine." Here's what my note says. That story is funny because it's maybe not like bring down the house funny, right? But that story is funny because we all know that first aid classes aren't taken by people so that you can help yourself if you witness an emergency, right? We take a first aid class so that we can help others who are in need of first aid. It's that simple. And it's just like that with our Christian faith and life. It's a call to service. If you're just hearing that the Christian life is a call to service, then Pastor John and I have not been doing a very good job in our preaching for these several years. It's absolutely pivotal to the Christian faith and life. Service is what we're called to be about, because this Jesus who we follow was the example and absolutely the pinnacle of what service meant, giving even his very life. To call shotgun with Jesus is to join him in service to others. We're called to this. We're called to joyfully serve as Christ's hands and feet, today and always, together and on our own. Thanks be to God. Amen. We'll join together now in singing our hymn of the day, which is We Are Called.